GM Farcaster. It is Tuesday, April 16th, and you are here with Nounish Prof and Adrienne and a very special guest, July. And I'm so excited to have you here. Hi, July. Welcome. Say hello
Thanks
to the
for
people.
having me.
And he looks nothing like his profile pic. This is usually the thing that you hear from everyone, is that you do not look like a statue of a Roman god. So there, now you all know. Now you all know. It's wonderful to have you here. Adrienne, wonderful to have you back. Yesterday we had not Adrienne, which you ended up buying Toady Hawk, not Adrienne.eth. And I think that is just hilarious. So
I don't know what he's going to do with it, but
I can't wait to see. And I'm also a little scared for you, but we'll see what happens.
I ate my dog food yesterday. I listened to the recording and I got caught up on the news of the day. It was great.
There you go. This is what we're here for. So speaking of, we are going to start with a little bit of news, and then we're going to jump into just chatting with July because there's so much to talk about. So we have from Dan, we have officially, everything is back up and running. And I did think this was a great message from him on uptime and app performance. We're greater than 20x the usage since the beginning of the year. So naturally, we're running into all the parts of the system that need to be scaled and rethought. This is both a Warpcast and Farcaster protocol challenge. Appreciate everyone's understanding and patience. And then below that, we're only 14 people, so hiring a few more staff and engineers will help. If you know of any staff engineers with experience at scaled consumer tech startups, have them reach out. And this was related to mostly images being down. So we had a lot of memes going along with this, and some of them were quite creative. So image uploads are working again. But before that, we had people getting very creative with sharing images like this, like very interesting.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
Isn't that impressive? That was pretty impressive, I gotta say. Very impressive. And then this from Sartoshi, images are down, but it can't stop us. And basically it's just a description of the parents in their 30s, young couple PNG. Text, honey, we saved enough for a house, let's have kids. And then burnt outrage guy. Text, was that the dip? So that was his meme in text form. And then they all came back. I want you to put the word out there that images are back from Bitflow's Ghost. And we had this one with the really fun raccoon, me celebrating that I can post images again. This is what you choose to start with? Okay. And then this was my favorite.
I've never seen the raccoon before.
You haven't seen the raccoon? Oh, the raccoon's everywhere.
I'm not on the internet enough, apparently.
You got to go hang out in memes more. And this was from Johnny as well, nonlinear. Failed to upload image, file size may be too large, which I thought this was quite creative. So you all probably remember a time when there were no images on Farcaster, because I do. So it's like, just going back to the olden days.
Wait, I literally don't. I remember no video.
Remember no video, but there was a time.
I don't remember no images, and I know I was here for it, but
yeah, you just forgotten. You were definitely here for it. There was no images for a little bit there.
It's like how I don't have you don't have memories when you're 4 years old. Like you remember one thing. It's like my brain wasn't developed back.
You only remember the pictures of the things that happened.
Exactly.
Did it change your behavior at all, not having images that you were able to post, or did it make a difference that much to you? Either one of you. I'm just curious.
Well, I'll go first. So that combined with the notification updates. So the notifications have changed where they're kind of showing priority and hiding things. You're not getting the little red dot every time you get a like. So I said the algorithm change to the dopamine casino might mean I'm not coming back to check. I was also playing with shiny new object AirChat over the weekend. So, and I was also traveling and I was away with my daughter for the weekend. So my behavior was changed over the weekend. Is it because I couldn't post images? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah. AirChat has been interesting. I of course, I had my interest for a good 24 hours and now I've waned. And July, I saw you on there as well, but I don't think have you actually put any voice messages on AirChat yet?
Yeah, I did. I was
Oh, you did. Okay.
curious to play around with it, and I I think I posted something. I almost said casted. I think I posted something on there. Yeah, I did. I was curious about it as well, and I tried it out. Um, Mostly just read a poem.
Oh, I have to go back in because I literally
Yeah.
posted in our Discord. Adrienne and I have a Discord where we share links and stuff for the show. And I saw you were in there, and I went waiting because there was nothing underneath yet. I'm like
Yeah.
waiting. What's he gonna
Seems
say
cool.
first?
You know, yeah. I'm not really. I haven't spent too much time on AirChat either to say this or that. I don't think my behavior also changed too much with images
You're pretty
not being
text-based
available.
anyways, it seems like. You're usually doing a lot of writing in casts and not really I'm not seeing a ton of images from you, generally speaking, anyway. So, although this one was yours, so I did use it as my
It's
background.
true. Yeah.
So I was trying to pull a good one for the background. So I think, I think there was a lot of folks who were thrown off by images not being available, like really thrown off, and especially in the memes and reply guy channels. They did not know what to do with themselves, but I think it was kind of, it didn't impact me too much. Occasionally it was like, oh, that's right, I can't share that yet. But mostly I would just share links to our mints, and that worked just fine. So it would show the image within the frame. So that worked fine.
Planned. Maybe it was a planned outage that forces you to go mint things and share the mint link.
So we're gonna blame Zora. It's all Zora. Jacob. It's a conspiracy theory now. We have a conspiracy theory. That's
not a conspiracy if it's true.
Don't start.
This is how it starts.
This is how it starts. Here's how we start.
Come to GM Farcaster for all your fake news.
All your fake news. We've got a bunch of other things for tomorrow that we'll be sharing because we will be back on tomorrow morning. So I'm going to save the rest for then. And I want to focus on our guest today because there's a lot to talk about. And so July, let's start with, can you give a little bit of your background? And then I want to dive into Faust because that is really fascinating to me. So tell us a little bit about, like, how did you end up in crypto? What did you do before? And what are you doing now? Or are you even in crypto? Are you? How did you end up on Farcaster, I guess is my question. Yeah.
Yeah. So my background is originally more in robotics. I've worked on autonomous vehicles and autonomous self-driving cars and a few other things. Was at Kitty Hawk building flying cars with Larry Page for about half a decade. That was till about I think we had, it was at Kitty Hawk, which had a lot of different projects, different vehicles at the time. It came much more from this sort of robotics background. How I got into crypto, I've just had an interest in things that are new. Came in more from.
Well, obviously, if you have an interest in flying cars, you're definitely interested in things that are new. It's so amazing.
Whatever the sort of interesting new futures that might be, those are something that was always of interest to me. Distributed systems and more interest in cryptography led me more towards crypto. I had friends mining Bitcoin probably back in 2012 or 2013. It didn't quite click for me. I think when Ethereum came along and I read the paper for sort of more world computer and distributed system, that was really difficult to take down, and sort of said, oh, it's like you can actually run computation on it, and started to click. Over time, just relatively sold on the sort of, oh, this is probably going to be a thing and it's going to last for a long time. I just don't know when it's going to happen. So just kind of stuck around, but was been mostly in sort of robotics. And I think thinking of it more as This is sort of this like new market that's going to open up and be an opportunity to do something in, and sort of just been keeping an eye on it. Yeah, I could probably talk about Kitty Hawk the rest of the show if that's sort of what you want as well. There's sort of a lot
So
of things to
interesting.
unpack there. We did over, I think, 25,000 flights. A bunch of them were crewed with people as well. I flew a bunch myself. The
Can we talk about
amount
that?
of
Yeah, I think we need to
what
pause
would
it
you
for a
like to
moment.
know? I guess
Like,
yeah.
like what's
Just-
it like to
I
fly
don't meet
a car?
Yeah, I just don't meet that many people who have said they've flown a car.
You are literally George Jetson sitting in front of us, and this is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I
what
think
is that?
one of the
And how is
ways.
it different from a plane? Like, how is it different from a small? What's the difference?
Yeah, one of the main differences is that, I mean, I think there are a bunch of different vehicles at Kitty Hawk. I was part of a program called Flyer. The program specifically that had sort of think of it almost like a very, very large. If you Google Kitty Hawk Flyer, you'll get some search results. There's pictures and videos as well. The sort of like a very large drone with a person in it. There were specific ways that building an aircraft there's a lot of different ways to go about it, and there are sort of much longer ways to get certification, and there are shorter ways to make more kind of experimental aircraft. I think we went the very, very experimental route in can we build and iterate and ship an aircraft relatively quickly. The other sort of longer route is getting sort of certification. There's a program called DO178C that you get certified to kind of create and then get a vehicle and test it, and it's a much longer process. So can you do something relatively quick? And that was kind of the thesis, I think.
So I know it wrapped up and didn't
Yeah.
move forward. What do you think the likelihood is that we'll see actual, commercial flying cars, like something that we can go to a dealer and buy ourselves in our lifetimes?
Yeah, I think it'll happen. I think, well, yes and no. I don't think
Okay.
it will happen in the way that we think it'll happen, but I think it'll happen. I think, maybe more. I don't think people will go and buy their flying cars, maybe, but I think there will be services that are available,
Mm.
akin to Waymo, perhaps, that allow for
Hmm.
different versions of it. Urban air mobility is a market that I think is still going to take some time to grow as well. So we'll see. Definitely possible. It's some of it's not just a technology problem. I think it's a business and politics problem.
Oh,
I mean,
that's interesting.
But just even things like autonomous driving, which is a lot more skeuomorphic to what we know, which is, driving is largely politics and kind of social problems. So I can't even imagine like you have to get the physics of flying cars, but then to think about adoption of like, oh, this is in your life and you can use it, seems like massive endeavor.
I think you look at something like General Magic from the 80s, and it's not that building an iPhone wasn't possible in the 1980s. It just didn't make economic sense to do so. And I think a lot of it today comes down more to it doesn't really make economic sense to build a not very capable vehicle that can ferry people across sort of short distances because we don't have power density and batteries, plus the cost of building. There's sort of no business model that quite makes sense. So I don't think it's an issue. Yeah, it's more of a market issue. Technology is slightly of an issue, but these are things that will just improve and we'll get there. So I almost have no doubt that it'll happen. It's just more a matter of time.
Reminds me of like some of the urban areas that have the helipads and things like that. It seems like it could be similar to that, but maybe used it depending on, and I have no idea what the cost is on that. But it seems like it could be something that eventually could be cost efficient and used in that way, where you're going across something like New York, where you're trying to get from one side to the other that could take forever, in a busy moment, and just, skipping over. But it sounds like it probably is in at least in my lifetime, maybe not in yours, is going to be a luxury. If it happens, it'll be a very high-end luxury type of thing, I would think. So
I think that was the initial, you nailed the head on, I think, some of the initial use cases that we went after.
Yeah.
Luxury market, ferrying people across areas that don't make sense to build infrastructure. Were definitely considerations. And yeah, there's different types of vehicles as well that are autonomous and you can fly with. So shorter distance vehicles that are more drone-like versus fixed wing aircraft have more aerodynamics on your side, so you get more fuel efficiency, or you get longer battery life, essentially. And they're all electric powered. Well, these ones were all electric powered. So you could also get a hybrid engine that will last you a lot longer, but it starts to use gas, or it uses to use gasoline. So it adds another element.
What powered? Yes. What was the
Kitty
power
Hawk
for
the kind of thesis was, hey, we're going to use electric. Can we do this with electric only? And that simplified things, but also made it a lot harder.
Weight limit? What was the weight limit?
Oh, good question.
For the flyer program, I think it was 250 pounds. If you're under 250 pounds, you qualify for ultralight aircraft. And if you have ultralight aircraft, you don't need certification. And it's like experimental aircraft, technically. So if you look up ultralight aircraft, you'll see the kind of vehicles that it's like the type of vehicles with the most number of accidents.
Fascinating.
Also not a good thing. Not good for branding at all. The marketing. You're probably going to die, but it's going to be really fun.
Did you guys see Three Body Problem?
Yes. Yeah. Have you watched
I
that?
have read the book, but I haven't watched the show yet.
Okay. I read the book, and I can't remember if this you didn't know it was a book?
I didn't even know it was a book. So this is perfect. Actually, this is perfect triangle right here. Only read the book, only saw the movie, read the book, saw the show.
But I forget the book, and I don't want to give away spoilers for the show, and I can't remember, but I'll say this to Prof, because there was like the one consideration of what gets sent into space in towards the later episodes of like really making sure you're optimizing for weight. And no spoilers, watch the show.
And also, you're not coming back. Yeah, it's official. If you come back, you're not coming back in your regular form. That's for sure.
This is such an interesting conversation because talking to you, July, I'm getting the sense that you hang out with people who also recognize that flying cars exist. So for the rest of the world, we have no idea it's possible. We think it's a physics problem. We think we're told it's kind of it's not going to happen because it can't happen. We've all heard the saying, we were promised flying cars and all we got were 180 characters. And I'm sure you get that all the time. And we're talking to someone who's flown in a car.
There you go. But where's my hoverboard?
It's sort of like, I think it's terrifying in some ways. I think it's initially terrifying because you don't know what to expect. And then I think the second part is it's terrifying, or at least our vehicle was terrifying in the sense that you just get so used to it so quickly. It's like operating a jet ski or something, and you don't realize.
Really? That's interesting.
So
why would that be terrifying? I would think that would be exhilarating.
Maybe we just, knew how duct tape the code was. So you're flying in this thing and it's so smooth. And well, no, I wouldn't say it's just duct tape, but it's sort of like this is just a bunch of code in some way.
Wild.
You know what goes into it.
We do have to
see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
You don't want to eat it sometimes.
I do want to shift a little bit to what your new project is, though, which is kind of related to this. And I'd love for you to tell us about Rock and what is rock and what you're working on now, because
Yeah,
that is
so
fascinating as well. And that's kind of bringing together your background with everything that's happening currently in technology.
yeah, I think, fundamentally, I see Faust as a robotics company. We're primarily, I think, 80 to 90, 80-ish, 90-ish% of the team is, most of the team is ex-Kitty Hawk, sort of my former colleagues, ex-Tesla, ex-Apple SPG, the special projects group, the self-driving car program. So yeah, and we're mostly based in SF Bay Area. And yeah, I mean, just from the team makeup and kind of what we're sort of long-term focused on, I'd say we're robotics focused. Again, kind of coming at it from this perspective that we think it's an interesting opportunity to build for an interesting new market in crypto. And starting in that way, that allows us to, sort of what can we do when, we start with crypto. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that, if anything, hardware companies and folks that want to build new kinds of hardware are just sort of think that it's a smaller market and sort of not worth pursuing. And we think it's worth pursuing and building sort of real things in. And so sort of in a way that allows us to start there. So that's kind of the sort of background. But yeah, we're building Rock. Rock is going to be sort of our first device. Again, we kind of left it a little bit vague, I think, here. We do have more already sort of planned, and if anything, we're working on more than kind of meets the eye. But fundamentally, it's, we think of it as a way that we can use to notarize sort of reality. The use case being that folks that are building on EVM compatible platforms don't want to build their own hardware and have a difficult time being able to do stuff in the real world today that use sort of sensors, and we can provide a way to close that gap between sort of the real world and what they're doing already on chain. And there's an opportunity to sort of start there. But yeah, fundamentally in the sort of long run, we sort of see more of a future where we're building more and more robotics, because that's honestly where we're coming from. So in a way, don't know how to describe it other than sort of thinking of Rock more as a robot head that we can kind of start off of, that we're adding. It's, it has cameras and it has things, but really to be able to sort of do more things autonomously is kind of what we're thinking in the long run.
I love
This is much
the
farther in the long run.
framing of notarizing reality. I think that, we've heard attestations before, which is very different from, what you're talking about, but I haven't heard it put in the terms of notarizing. And I think my legal brain found that very interesting. So that's my background. So it was just kind of, oh, that's, hadn't thought about it like that. Can you give an example of how this might work or how it will work? And so we kind of have an idea of a use case for this.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, how one of the things, what's different from maybe one way to explain this, sort of what's different from saying making like a attestation already, kind of using EAS, like Ethereum attestation service or sort of other things. The difference is this is more sort of taking in, we're building the hardware that allows for people to be able to make the proof more on the hardware side. So it kind of sits more on the actual device. And so when you're taking in sensor data, we can kind of create proofs, or we can allow software developers to create proofs for their programs. So we kind of provide the infrastructure to do that and make those attestations, sort of sensor attestations locally. And then you can send those attestations to some location. Right now, one of the things is we're using phones and computers as interfaces for everything that's sort of in Web3. And there's no sort of alternative way to start putting in information into there's no hardware designed for sort of the on-chain world. And so what we see is if we can kind of provide those, it starts to unlock new use cases.
Is that, and if I'm understanding July, and tell me if I'm completely off base here, but
Yep.
Even with Farcaster and with my messages being signed, when you get a cast from me and it's cryptographically signed, you know it's authentically coming from me. But if I post a video, there's really no way to authorize that that video was actually happened. So I can take a deep fake. Yes, it's me. It's authentic that I did it, but the video itself can't be, or an image can't be authentic. But if it's coming from the hardware of if I snap a photo and send it through, then it's kind of validating the authenticity of the actual photo.
Yeah, I think of it as like you could technically make a deep fake proof photo machine that's rock. That this is the only machine in the world that can take photos on this specific Farcaster account. I think that's possible. In the longer run, when we have other sensors like GPS, it'll be possible to notarize not only the photo but also the location data. And again, there's sort of I would argue with something like Foam Space, the folks over there at Foam Space, they're working on a really cool problem where you're really trying to prove that you're somewhere specific, and you're proving it without GNSS or GPS. For us, we think of it as we don't, our GPS might be spoofed, 0.001% of the time, but we're just really kind of notarizing that GPS. If it's spoofed, we're not going to be able to prove that. That's okay, but it's sort of notarizing that sensor data alongside it.
That's really
so interesting. Like Alep's trip to Kenya to verify a goat, bringing it back to Farcaster memes.
Yep.
That would have been a perfect use case. That would have been
everyone said we don't believe goat. So then he gets sent on a plane, and now no one believes him.
That he went. There's like a whole bunch. We were talking about that. Adrienne's like, should I go to Kenya and make sure that he's there with the goat? Like, oh my god, it was really funny, and but this would solve that completely.
Yeah.
Or the whole discussion of the moon landing. There's a ton of conspiracy theory around the moon landing, whether or not it actually happened and blah, blah, blah. So there you go. Like this would, send it up in space and say, yep, I'm here. Here I am. So
yeah. I mean, you need a sort of other proofs, other infrastructure that you would trust, So for example, if it's like GPS, you'd have to trust GNSS. The global navigation satellite system, and then GNSS is different in each country. So if you are taking proofs in, say, like Russia, it's a little bit more difficult to prove that there's sort of an area around certain areas in Russia where GPS turns off as well. So it's harder to say exactly. And again, but these are sort of edge cases. Most of the time in most areas, GPS is going to get you most of the way there. And we do use it for even navigating vehicles. If combined with inertial navigation system, GPS does pretty good, like centimeter accuracy.
Really,
you can actually navigate vehicles with it. Yeah. So
really interesting. There's a lot of talk. I hear a lot of folks say that hardware is the hardest thing to jump into. And do you ever have any concerns in that space? Like, I think you even mentioned before when we talked that you're like, I said I'd never do hardware again. So what keeps bringing you back to hardware, and how is it? How do you find that comparable to doing something else, like just focusing strictly on software and things like that?
Yeah, I think hardware is definitely a longer timeline compared to software. The speed at which you can navigate with software, generally speaking, unless you're sort of training models and doing sort of more AI things, that takes a little longer for sure. But I think hardware in general, it's a lot of moving parts. I would say it's multidisciplinary in the sense that depending on if you're doing sort of robotics, it's mechanical engineering, it's electrical engineering, it's systems engineering, it's software engineering, it's embedded systems, it's robotic software, embedded systems, and software, like general software engineering, are all sort of different things. Yeah, there's sort of a lot of people and a lot of things that need to come together in order to get things done. And if anything, I've also been a part of a lot of different teams that have built hardware, and I think if anything, one of the ways that I think Faust is doing things differently is we're sort of starting kind of piecemeal and growing the sort of complexity as we move forward, and trying to sort of ship the hardware cycles as fast as we can, obviously. But one of the ways to do it is to sort of build the whole robot first and ship that, but that takes sort of potentially years and much longer. Again, if it's sort of a more industrial setting, it's possible to kind of build things that are going to be usable quickly, but we almost thought of it as, can we do sort of smaller pieces and kind of build on that instead of trying to do everything all at once. So we're trying to take a little bit of a different approach.
Adrienne, that looked like you had a question. I saw you writing things down. I'm
happy to answer anything.
Shifting it to you.
Relatively open book.
I'll tell you what I wrote down. I don't have questions.
I saw you making notes.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to see some really good hardware companies. And I think it's funny because inherently you can't do hardware like you do software, but I think some of these companies are trying to kind of take that software approach.
Yep.
As much as possible. No, this is what I wrote down in quotes. I said I'd never do hardware again. A great quote by a hardware founder. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. And I've heard that from so many. Like I've heard that like floating around at different folks saying similar things too. So I think it's really interesting that you kind of still end up back there, because obviously that's got to be somewhere in your passion or in your DNA or something that keeps driving you back to that.
I think like physically moving things are just of robotics in general and hardware in general is something that I'm just really excited and interested in doing. And also, I think one of the things that one of the sort of different paths that we're taking is I also think crypto is just going to be this another technology that's available for people that unlocks new things. And the intersection of that is not something that you don't see a lot of robotics people kind of thinking, crypto is the path forward, or is a sort of market that we can start with. And you also don't see a lot of crypto people kind of naturally having a ton of experience building robotics. And I think our team does. So I think that's one of our sort of unique paths that we're choosing to take, even though it kind of looks weird now for sort of some people that are maybe not familiar with crypto. We kind of think of it as a place that they think there's opportunity.
I love this. Michelin.eth is in our chat and said, drops the quote, "I don't invest in founders who are thinking about the future, but founders who are already living in the future." And I think that's like perfect. It's a perfect description of you, really. Between flying cars and robots and blockchain all coming together, it's pretty cool.
There's good comments in the chat today.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the chat's like popping off. By the way, the chat also said this was my favorite. So true. To be honest, we love our hosts, but the chat is always fire. In other words, they're just here for the chat. we're just we're just window dressing. So
yeah, I love this, Rafi G in the chat. Small little rocks gossiping about the state of reality is even more epic than flying cars. There's the future.
Yeah, there's the future. I do have a few other questions that are unrelated to rock. So before I move forward, totally. Adrienne, anything else on this topic before I dive into July on Farcaster, if you will.
No, I'd love to go to July on Farcaster.
Okay.
Sure.
Because that's a whole other thing. So I'm going to start with this meme because I think it sums it up perfectly. July is like memes, but niche. Elaborate on that. No. I thought that was just absolute perfection. And I want to dive into this a little bit. Two things I've been thinking about. I'm the youngest that I'll ever be today in my entire life. Reducing yourself to narratives alone and you will become sophist. I feel like every time I read one of your casts, I need an hour to like do some research and then think about it. So like you're a very deep thinker. So what that second part, what did you mean by that? So that I don't have to spend as much time researching. Like what was and what got you thinking about this? I guess is my other question.
Yeah, so I think the path that I got there was primarily because I was thinking about like building things, of course. I think that there's a sort of inherent relationship between, your strategy is only as good as the communication that you can sort of bring to the table. So if you can't communicate your intent, or if you can't communicate what you're trying to do in some way, it's difficult to, like you might have a really great plan, but it might not even, there's no sort of point in any of the plan or what you're doing to if you're not able to explain it. But also just being able to explain it and explaining that you have a great plan, for example, is not a precursor to, or just a plan alone. Like saying that you have this sort of a path forward, or being able, you can kind of be a charlatan. It's actually quite easy in a way, and just kind of reminded me of sophists and sophistry and sort of classical antiquity, mostly during the sort of Socrates time, when oration was the primary way to communicate ideas. So people would train themselves in the art of oration. And what is oration? Oration is a way to convince people of certain, using rhetoric, to using certain ways to convince a large audience of ideas, even if, and again, the sophist would be accused, rightly so, sometimes, of just being, this is like, it's like learning how to be a charlatan, learning how to be just doing sales almost. But so that alone almost kind of puts you in the sophist bucket. And if so what is the other side?
Okay, super interesting. There's something else that you posted. This was actually a couple weeks ago, but it caught my attention also, that I'd love to dive into a little bit. If you live indefinitely, you'll eventually reach the heat death of the universe. In order to live beyond that, we will have to transgress the known existing universe. Perhaps that will happen between now and the end of this all. 2, friendships last a lifetime. 3, the act of creation lasts forever in that moment. And then you had, this was sort of taking off on how long will things last? Websites, software, human-made objects, digital data, geological, biological, evolution of species, evolution of planet, evolution of solar system, galactic, death of sun, heat death of universe. So that's a lot. But I thought the act of creation lasts forever in that moment. That to me was like what really jumped out. What does that mean to you? Like what was the thinking behind that particular statement? Because that to me just was like, that made me think. It took me a minute. That was one of those, I'm going to need an hour just to digest this.
I think I want to preface this with why I was thinking that to begin with. I think I was just thinking about like a lot of, there's been popularity in like longevity, and people throw around this idea that, hey, we're going to live forever. And it's like, I don't think we understand what that means. Like we kind of toss it in the same way that we toss around oh, everyone's going to buy this, but like we don't really know what everyone means.
Mm-hmm.
And so
this
what
is
does
a
that
little
mean?
Brian Johnson. There's a little like pushback there on the longevity movement. Okay, interesting.
Well, I don't think it's a
little bit.
pushback necessarily, but just what does
Reality.
that mean? Like, what is, so if you
Yeah.
want to live forever, how long is that going to be? So what if you live till the end of the heat death of the universe? Are you going to, is forever supposed to be longer than that? Or is it like, does it end there? How long do you even want to live? Like, so to me, it just was more of, if anything was more of I just started thinking about what that actually forever means, and kind of started thinking about, are there places that we in some ways can live forever without having to live forever already? And started thinking about how, there's different ways to create things. For example, who knows how long certain works of art will last, but still, for example, Vincent van Gogh paintings have lasted way beyond his lifetime, and we can still continue to sort of enjoy them and celebrate them, and most likely they'll last at least another 100 years. So just this idea that hundreds of years, these things are lasting much longer than us. So these things that people do in the moment, they still kind of last for much, much longer time than, of course they're going to deteriorate, and kind of become just a bunch of crumbling rocks and crumbling paint. But are there ways that last much longer than us? And sort of started thinking about that. So don't pretend to have the answer, just thoughts.
I think it's
Questions?
interesting that so many who I would consider techno-optimists are also deep studiers of history. I think there's some kind of connection there. And I think that's important because it's, that saying of, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it kind of thing. But also you can learn so much and also recognize those patterns and how that goes. But okay, that's a little different from what we were just talking about. But I've thought about that too, of like, do I want to live forever? I have no desire to do that, like at all. But I also find it very interesting of like, you mentioned Van Gogh, that during his life wasn't celebrated and didn't live to see that appreciation of his work, but yet it outlives him and lives on. So those are those things that we create that are going to outlast us. So in other words, Adrienne, GM Farcaster in some kind of time capsule going to space somewhere. There we go. Maybe this episode on the blockchain
and
forever.
I get reminded of a quote. There's a quote that I pulled from my parents' house. Like I took a picture of it and I keep casting it like every, I don't know, few months or so. But it was just about getting lost in the act of creation. And it was kind of like create for the sake of creating and getting lost in it. And I think when we focus on kind of on the creative and put your energies there and kind of divorce from the output is a really freeing place to be. So I kind of tie those. I don't know if that's where you were getting at with the third point of that feeling of creation lasting forever, but
yeah, I think I almost kind of think of it also as a way for, you can kind of make something and in some way, if it's not necessarily appreciated but interacted with, it's not really kind of reminds me of that movie, that Coco, the Pixar movie. I don't know if you saw it, right? But it's sort of like if people don't remember you after you've passed away, that's when you sort of die the second time. The first time you die is when you physically die, and the second time you die is when no one remembers you anymore, essentially.
And so Coco has a focus around Day of the Dead and that sort of whole tradition. And
big fan of Pixar movies, by the way. I think they're
same.
just amazing. The whole process of like how a lot of the Pixar movies, especially the early movies, were made it's like really is a huge testament to collective group creation of something that's like really well made. I think they're sort of obsessed with how to make really great movies, and it takes a long time to make really great things, and I think that's or at least that path that they're sort of what they've committed to. So yeah. big
Total
fan of
side
those
note,
movies.
there's a Nouns movie that's coming out, and a lot of the artists that are working on it used to work at Pixar. So it's 3D, what's it, 3D pixel guy or 3D, I forget what his name is, 3D guy, something like that. And he's one of the artists on there, and you can see some of his mini, small little shorts that he's done. You feel the Pixar vibes in it, and it's really just amazing to see. And they're doing it more from a collective perspective rather than the studio perspective, and having it put more in the artist's hands. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out in my mind in terms of like where we're going with different blockchain connections to that, and the way in which we're doing creation more in the hands of the creator rather than in the hands of a producer who's sort of directing that those aspects. But
when does that movie come out, Prof?
I don't know. The next part of it should be coming out soon. Remember the movie, the 4334, the one for the that dropped. Yeah, that's same group of artists did that one as well.
Awesome.
And that was really fun. Yeah. So total side note. Sorry.
So,
I
easy.
had to throw nouns in there every once in a while, can't help myself.
It's not an episode without a noun drop.
Noun drop.
But I think it's like easy to make a TikTok, hard to make these long films that really, feel however, but even like the best films that we're seeing today are forgotten in generations.
Interesting.
So
yeah. Very few stand the test of time. And my favorite movie is from 41, something like that. So, some of them do. Some of them
Yeah, I
hold
think
up.
sometimes some of the best kind of content is not independent of the time in which it's created. So I think a lot of really great films, or maybe it's also just the kind of how this works, but some of the best films I think were made in the sort of between the 30s and 70s, partially because that's when sort of film was starting to become and reach. I think technologies and sort of the medium, if the sort of the Marshall McLuhan medium is the message. There's sort of seasons to the mediums as well. So there's sort of like a spring and a summer and autumn and a winter to them. And I think we're kind of in the autumn of movies is sort of this certain sort of format of 2 hours. And it used to be sort of like there was a constraint, you had to work within the constraint. Now it's sort of this like infinite digital format, and that's kind of changed the way that content is created. So we can't go back to this way that medium content, this sort of at a time when it was, all you could do, it was sort of pushing the boundaries of like human capacity to build 2-hour films.
Yeah, Casablanca today would be a whole like 10-part miniseries easily on Netflix. Yeah. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be what it's
different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally different. And I wonder how that would change the. I don't know, some of the things that are so great about it. So, but telling a story in a different way, where it almost feels like you're living those, whatever it was, 48 hours or whatever that, time period, very quickly. Whereas that would be dragged out over, numerous episodes. So it's, very different storytelling. I don't know if I think there's good and bad to that. You mentioned something else in there. The media is the message, which you got me down that rabbit hole again, which I hadn't read that since I was in college, because you were reading something recently around that. I can't remember what the name of the book was that you were reading though.
I think this medium is the message. Yeah.
Was it that just that
essay? Yeah.
I thought you were reading a book though related to it. Was the same author, but
the television book.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's also fascinating, by the way. American broadcasters.
That's what it was. Yeah.
That's
what it was.
Whole history behind.
Yeah, we need to dive into that more. Like that to me is really right now because of what we're doing. I'm thinking about, what we're doing right now, and I didn't, this trajectory has been fairly recent. So thinking about what's changing about media and the way in which we communicate in the time of blockchain and Also, again, putting things directly in creators' hands more than we've ever had, and where it's not being controlled by sort of a studio boss or a, a network CEO. So it's kind of interesting to look back at that writing and see how prevalent and how relevant it is, actually relevant today, more so than it even was when he wrote it back in the 60s and was talking about it in the 70s and 80s. So really interesting. Yeah, you need to go read that, Adrienne. That was it. For me, it was reliving it, but it had been a long time. It's been like 30 years since I read it. So yeah, but it's really relevant to all of that today, for sure. It's so, yeah, very interesting. What were you going to say, Adrienne? Sorry, I cut you off.
I wasn't going to say anything. I will read that. I finally finished Read, Write, Own on the plane yesterday.
Oh, good.
And have a million other things just about on-chain media that I want to talk to you about someday.
How have you read Read, Write, Own, July?
I have not. It's in my list of books. Yeah, I'd like to read it at some point. I'd
love to get your takes on it too. I think that would be I'd love to hear your takes on that. I think the basic part of it, which is really, I was thinking about this today, the computer versus the casino, sort of that basic thought premise. Today, we're talking about the computer. Last Tuesday, we were with Yasik, and it was all about the casino, but not really. Like, there was a little bit of computer in there too, but it was kind of interesting to go with the degen and to this. And it leads me to something else.
From
that you
degen
just
to flying
posted.
cars.
We do it all. We do it all. Let me see if I can find it now. You were talking about spam.
Are we coming up on time soon?
Oh, we're so coming up.
We have to budget.
Yes, we got a budget.
We passed 21 minutes.
Oh, for God's sakes. Yes, I knew we were going to. I'm keeping them as long as we can. So this is something you posted recently, and I think this is very relevant to what we were just talking about. One person's spam can easily be another person's favorite content on the internet. The more people join any network, the more this becomes the case. Early on, it's easy to say what is spam and what is not spam. But as the network grows, it's more murky. It's a lot more murky. Spam is not objective as one would like it to be. And that to me is just like, maybe this is a great place to kind of bring us full circle back to Farcaster and sort of what is going on with the network there right now, and sort of those adjustments that are being made, and what we were talking about, as we started the show, talking about Dan, looking at, okay, here's where we've grown, an insane amount in a very short period of time. How do you start to scale for that, adjust for that, the sort of the growing pains of all that, and sort of so when I go into the July channel, it's like a whole different freaking world than if you go to the degen channel or the memes channel or the reply guys, or, very different feel. And it has a much more thoughtful. So for those who maybe haven't spent any time there, and if you're feeling overwhelmed by sort of the casino-ish aspects of crypto, go hang out in there for a while. Whole different vibe. So when you think about spam for you, like what is something that you don't want to see on your timeline, or how are you dealing with that? And then like, what is your thinking along the line, if you want to expand a little bit on that post, that cast that you had mentioned spam in it?
Like, I guess, what is spam to me? Is that more?
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah. Like, what do you not want to see on your timeline?
I mean, I think like
going back to that thinking.
I don't think there's anything specific that I don't want to see. I guess, maybe I just don't want to see I don't want to see the same thing over and over again. Like, I think that's more spam to me.
Yeah.
If it's sort of different things, it's more interesting. If it's the same thing over and over, if it's just a wall of just GMs. Like, I don't, if it's only that, it's going to feel spammy, even if it's from people that I know. So it's not some specific content that is going to bother me particularly. But yeah, I also, sometimes I go in and I don't even, for a while, I think I didn't even read the home feed. I would just kind of like cast and sort of respond to things and sort of just leave. So I don't think I treat it in a yeah, I don't know what other people do, but that's the way that I use it. Sometimes I don't even read through all the other casts. Although I do my best to sort of like ones that I see. Or I go into specific people's profiles and just kind of like some stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting how you adjust your, for me, I should say, I adjust the way I approach Warpcast depending on what's happening within, the regular feed. If it's just a little too overwhelming, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start with my notifications. I go through that, and then I start like digging into certain channels and see what's going on. And that's sort of been the adjustment since channels became more popular, I'd say, or launched. Adrienne, I know we're coming up on time. I want to make sure I leave a few minutes for your fun, usual questions. So I'm throwing it to you.
All right. So July,
hit him with the lightning round. Here we go.
Yeah, we just do lightning round. Don't overthink.
Let's do it.
Don't overthink it.
But before I do you know what the bot or not says about you, your account?
No.
Okay. It's horrible and it's wrong. It has a horrible assessment. Like I've been using bot or
so
not.
Am I a bot? I'm a bot, huh?
It says it's incredible. And I was like, so curious. I'm like, I bet it's going to say something like, the biggest gigabrain genius, thoughtful philosopher on Farcaster. And it does. And it has you as a bot or low effort caster, platitudes, awesome. Hyperbole.
That's so funny.
That's fantastic.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And I was
not
like,
a bot.
Not a bot. Anyway.
Not a bot.
Amazing.
Do you ever say, all right, let's go. Do you ever say bro IRL?
Yep.
Oh,
absolutely.
Not a bot.
That's not a bot.
Yeah.
Also, and I don't know if you saw this, we can talk about this on tomorrow's show, but there's a new channel called Bromero because Dan Romero
I pulled many links for tomorrow on that.
Yeah.
Dan Romero thinks it's a red flag if you say bro IRL.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is the first friend you made online, or what was your first kind of internet friend that you've made in life?
Internet friend online. Wow. I have
favorite
no idea.
question of hers.
And I have to ask because we're on a social network. That's how we
meet our friends online.
We all meet on Farcaster. So I'm curious what people's first kind of internet connection
Facebook?
was. We get a lot of, cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Farcaster channel?
My favorite Farcaster channel right now is Storefronts.
Ooh. I don't even think
know
I've been in
which
that
one.
one.
I'll have to look that up.
Ooh,
what is your favorite?
Now?
Just pictures of storefronts.
That's it. Oh, wow. All right. I have to go look at this.
I love Farcaster.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
My favorite channel is Wooden Boats. It's just all about
Wooden Boats is great. Yeah.
It's
Trains is also great. Big fan of Trains. Shout out, N64 Jerry.
I've got to go follow some new channels.
Yeah. What's your favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday is probably Thanksgiving.
Morning person or night owl?
Usually a night owl, though morning person more recently.
Completionist or not?
Completionist.
Concert or sporting event?
Concert.
Frame or cast action?
Frames.
Kiwi
also,
skin.
Is this a picture of the Frames hackathon?
It is.
Yes.
Okay. So
my background, if you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. But my brother-in-law is in that picture.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say who it is, but definitely in that picture.
Somewhere back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the variant office. The weekend frames were
frame Friday.
It's like my favorite virtual background. You have 7 minutes with a bright, attentive 7th grader. How do you spend your time?
This came from, I think it was yesterday.
Doing
Crypto?
whatever it is that they want to do.
How do you
All
find
right.
out what they want to do?
Ask them what they're excited about doing.
Totally thought you were going to make a robot with them. Kind of disappointed. I'm kind of disappointed that you're not building a robot.
What's your, all right, last two. What's your biggest fear right now?
My biggest fear is probably dying. Not like the fear of death, but just that I'll leave a lot of things incomplete.
Completionist.
Yeah.
I might have to end it there, but what's your favorite meme coin?
My favorite meme coin is Doge.
Classic.
All right.
I think it's
Classic.
the origin of all meme coins. I
That's
have a email wallet somewhere from 2013 or 2014 that I don't have access to.
Oh no.
Hmm.
Of a
Oh
bunch of
no.
Doge.
With a bunch of Doge.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Thanks for
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been just an incredible chat. And I have to say, Fig.eth, who's in our chat, said /July, the July channel is my refuge from Purple Casino. And I thought that was a perfect way to put that. It is a nice little refuge. So if you need a break from the Purple Casino, go ahead into /July. And it's not just you who's posting very thoughtful things. As you go in there, it's mostly other folks, and it just is a whole different vibe. So thanks so much. We will be back tomorrow morning because it's only Tuesday and it feels like it's got to be Friday, but it's not. So we'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, with our regular show with Adrienne, and we'll be talking all things, I don't even know, Bromero and such. So we'll see you then. And thank you again, July. We really did. We'll see you at FarCon, I believe. So we'll see you in a few weeks, couple weeks.
Thank you so much
Coming
for
up
having
fast.
me, and see you IRL.
See you
sooner
IRL.
than we think. Yeah.
Do we get to meet Rock
Can't wait.
IRL?
Yeah,
Yeah.
TBD.
No?
TBD.
All right. That'll
We'll
be
see.
interesting.
He didn't say no.
He didn't say no.
He didn't say no.
So maybe. All right.
So you're
awesome.
saying there's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance. All right.
see you
We'll
soon.
see you. We'll see
Thanks,
you tomorrow.
July.
We'll see
Thanks
you
so
in
much for
Farcaster.
having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
chatters.
Thanks, chatters. Bye-bye.